Hi, welcome back to TV Toastmasters. I'm Phyllis Harmon, and with me tonight is someone that I want you to meet. His name is Patrick Locke, and he's going to talk to us about soft skills for leaders. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you. I was glad to be here.
So, Patrick, I find you to be a fascinating person. You've written a few articles for our magazine, Voices, on leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me what has gotten you interested in this topic?
Well, years ago, my background is in military and construction. And those two elements, as you probably know, very authoritarian.
Oh, so I've heard.
Exactly. And justifiably so in some cases. I was an infantry NCO sergeant, and I served in Vietnam. And in those types of situations, authority is good.
Well, that's what they teach, isn't it?
Yes, that's what they teach. They pound it into you. Pound it, literally sometimes. But it's, when you look at what that does and then how you take something like that into life situations, when I was in the construction business, I just transferred that right in. My father was military and my father was in construction, and I learned the same thing from him. So taking those skills, at one point, I realized that I needed to have different types of skills.
So before we really get into that, because I'm really interested in hearing how your research that you've done on soft skills and what you're teaching out there in the community, let's talk a little bit more about the military and your construction industry. So you were in the military first.
Yes.
And you learned all of the skill set on how to manage men.
Yes. Yes, primarily. Yes.
Primarily. Now, the authoritarian piece that you were talking about, you did mention that it was very vital that they use that model. Why is that?
Well, take combat situations. The person in charge, who is typically the sergeant or a lieutenant out in a small combat unit, they're supposed to know, and they are in charge of either a squad, a platoon, a small unit, a company. And they have the authority, and they're also supposed to have the understanding of tactical situations and to direct people and to direct a unit in a combat situation.
So doesn't that really mean that they have the lives of their men in their hand? They're responsible for the...
They're responsible to keep them alive and accomplish the mission.
So taking that into the construction industry, I can see there might be a bit of a correlation in that you have to keep your people safe because of OSHA standards and accidents that happen. So,
yeah. Well, when I first started in construction, OSHA didn't exist. Oh. We used to do a lot of things that OSHA would not allow them. However, safety is a big element in construction. My dad always just pounded safety into me, and I learned quite a bit. So keeping people safe, yes, is important. More important than that, though, is getting that job done and keeping on schedule, keeping things moving. Typically a carpenter is a person that progresses through the ranks of leadership in the construction industry because they know the most. They have typically, they're on the job in the beginning and they're the last ones to leave the job in the end. So they are the person that has the most exposure to all of the trades. And I've got into leadership through that.
So how did you do that?
Well, I got things done.
So that doesn't naturally make you a leader.
No, it
just
doesn't.
makes you someone who gets things done.
That's right, get things done. And as I was able to do that, I developed this even more authoritarian because I thought I knew what to do, so then you've got to do what I tell you to regardless, and I'll take responsibility for the results.
So you mean that there is none of this, hey, I'm new on the job and I know a better way?
No, that didn't work then. It's, I knew what to do, and you do what I tell you to, or you take the highway.
Oh.
That was about what it amounted to. For a long time, many years, I operated that way.
So what changed?
Well, I was finishing a project up in San Diego. I was sent to San Diego to complete a project that we had a 125,000 square foot building that had to be done in 90 days. Owner in building, operating in 90 days. There was no room for discussions. I knew what had to be done. I did it. I made it work, and it happened. Everybody was happy. However, I got a phone call from my boss that said, we'd like you to run the San Diego operation now. And I thought, okay. Well, I knew because I had been in business before, and I had a partner, and my partner was in charge of the office and all of the marketing and everything, and I was in charge of the field. And both of us did our jobs very well.
So when they say we want you to be in charge of the operation, this is a whole shift in
This
what
is
you were
a
doing?
shift from the field. This is out of the field into the office.
Oh.
And I did have enough understanding of the office to know that that wasn't my skill set. And I had to do something about it if I wanted to do that job.
So what did you do?
I told my secretary to find me a Toastmaster club.
Okay, stop right there. So I like where this is going, but why did you have her find you a Toastmasters club of all things?
I knew that I had to do something about my communication skills. It wasn't going to work. I knew that much. Now, I hadn't really had a lot of interaction with Toastmasters before, and I really don't know where the thought came from, but it came out. And she got me involved in a Toastmasters club, and I started working on those skills. And that was in 1985.
Oh, wow.
And from that point, it just kept working on it and kept working on it and kept working on it.
So Toastmasters is all about communication and leadership.
Yes.
I get that because I am one. I want to know how you made the leap from authoritarian to a really an in the office demeanor, because it's totally different.
It's tough. It was tough, and it's been tough because there's always a tendency to go back to that. I've done a few assessments, you know, personality assessments and value assessments and whatnot. And from those, I found out a little more about me and who I am and how I operate and what goes on up here. And with that, I took that information and started working on developing some different skills, and I started reading a lot more than I used to. And I find that leaders are readers.
I've heard that.
Reading, I've started getting just books on leadership from any place I could, and just started reading. And it was difficult for me at first because I have a real rough case of ADD, and that brought a lot of challenges. But as I started really reading and listening to audio, that was one of the things that really helped me a lot, because I could listen to the audio continuously, and sooner or later, you listen to enough and something takes hold. Yeah, something sticks. And that's about what happened. It started to stick. And as I've read different authors on leadership, I've seen different studies that people have done. Gallup in particular, you're probably familiar with the Strengths Finder, and that whole a group of books that they've put together, which is based on a lot of research that they've done. And if you really look at those and look at some of the assessments that they put out, it'll give you some very good insight into your skills and then how to develop your skills, which is the real important element. So it's awareness at one place, creating increased awareness continuously.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. We need to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want you to go further into your research and what you've learned and what you can share with our audience.
Fantastic.
Hello everyone, my name is Christopher Taylor and I'm with TV Toastmasters. My home group is Feedbackers in Beaverton, Oregon. I first joined Toastmasters for a couple reasons. I was nervous. I had trouble speaking in front of others. I needed some help. And when I joined Toastmasters, not knowing what to expect, I learned several things. One, it gave me the confidence to speak in front of others. I learned how to take constructive criticism. I benefited from that. That benefit was the confidence to get a job. When I took the suggestions in the club, when I started speaking in front of a group and remained speaking through my role, doing table topics, getting topics that you're unaware, learning how to think on your feet, learning how to speak on your feet. I first started working managing the Berkshire Hathaway account. I started as a back office role, not the face of the company. It didn't take long until I was dealing directly with the executives. Today I give executive briefings for Verizon Enterprise in the highest level in the enterprise space. And I'm grateful and I owe all of that to Toastmasters. Thank you.
Hi, welcome back to TV Toastmasters. I'm Phyllis Harmon, and tonight I am interviewing a man of research, very fascinating topic. He's talking about soft skills for leaders and the research that he has done. Welcome back to the show, Patrick.
Well, thank you. It's a joy to be here.
So right before the break, we were talking about the Strength Finder and what that brings to the table. What is some of the other research that you've done that has either been in opposition or that has just firmed up what it is that you've learned with that?
Well, as I've looked at organizations, again, I've started doing a lot of reading. Well, particularly about 8 years ago when I moved up here to Washington, I started reading more and more. A few authors, one of them was a man named Ram Charan. He wrote a book called The Leadership Pipeline. And as I started reading that, I started looking at the different skills that they identified. And again, his research was connected with Gallup's research. So when I look at a book, I typically look at not just the author, but I look at who did the little reviews on the book. And I started realizing that a lot of these people were connected in one way or another. So as I looked at different books and I started reading about different types of research that they've done with people, particularly on leadership, that the trends were moving more to this team work instead of individuals.
So you're saying team-centric instead of siloed, where everybody does their own thing.
Exactly, yes. The old silo is not on its way out, it's gone. And there are still people that need to realize that, but those organizations are the ones that are having challenges.
So when you say challenges, they're not able to keep their people, or they're
their
not
organizations. I looked at Jack Welch, you're familiar with, and what he did at GE.
General Electric.
Right? I studied that process that they went through at GE to train leadership specifically. So they have a facility that's its own purpose, is just to train leaders. They bring leaders from all over the world to this facility, and they work together. They learn the soft skills of leadership. That's how to work with people, how to identify skills in people, how to talk to people and listen, or to really listen to people and understand where they are, what's important to them, what they know, what they don't know, and to be able to assess talent.
So through this process, one would think that you might come across people who are ill-fitted for the jobs that they're in.
Yes.
In your research, how has that been worked with?
That's a real soft skill that a manager needs to develop. It's not something we're born with. And a lot of people will say, you're a natural leader.
Right.
Somebody said that to me the other day, and I just cringed. I said, no, you didn't know me 20 years ago. If you knew me 20, 30 years ago, you'd never say a statement like that. Leaders are developed. You may have skills by the time you start interacting with people, and that comes from whatever environment you grew up in. If you grew up in an environment where there was a lot of interaction in the family, that is more conducive to developing quality skills than if you grew up in a family where it was just shut up and you're there to not be seen or heard, but just there. Okay? So different environments get people moving in particular paths. So when you have those basic skills there from an environment that you grew up in, then you can start developing. But you have to, at some point, have an awareness and a consciousness that you're going to put effort into developing those skills of dealing with people and working with people.
So if I was an alien coming in from Mars, and I landed, and the first person who saw me says, we want you to lead this team, what is it I need to know?
You need to understand first where you are, do a self-evaluation, and even work with someone else to evaluate your skills and your talents to see where you're at. You got to have a base point. If you don't have that, you're all over the table. You don't know where you are. You don't know what your strengths are. You don't know what to work on, what to stay away from, how you would fit into a team.
So would you suggest that people who want to get into leadership need to go through the Strength Finder or some other model?
There's a few. The Strength Finder, I think, is a very good one. There's a lot of them out there. There's one that a gentleman named Lynn Taylor does. It's called CVI, the Core Values Index, and that is a very powerful assessment also. And then you've got things like Myers-Briggs, and there's many others. We even have one in Toastmasters that is, once a person gets into a level 2 in their program, then depending on the path they've chosen, if it's on a leadership path, there is an assessment in there that's very good also. But I suggest that people do at least 3 different assessments to look at, get a cross-section of what their talents are, what their values are, where they are on the spectrum of leadership, and to really assess themselves and understand where they want to go from there.
Okay, so me being the alien, I came in, I took your advice, I find that I'm really good at chatter and that people like to listen to me. Not so good at telling people what to do. It kind of throws me off. What do I do next?
Well, you would start looking at how to develop particular skills.
So whatever I'm weak in.
Yes, exactly. There's one school of thought that says, this is a weakness that you have, don't worry about that, only focus on your strengths. And that's okay. However, we still have challenges where we have to manage a process, and it requires a certain amount of skill of doing something. So we have to develop those skills and understand how to do that, and that comes into discipline. How disciplined a person is and how disciplined they can bring themselves to be to study something and do something about whatever their challenges
Can you
are.
learn discipline, or is that an innate
Yeah,
quality?
it's tough. I'll tell you, it can be tough. But yes, it's learned. There has to be a desire there to do it.
Okay.
If a person is undisciplined or not disciplined to the degree that they need to be to complete something or succeed at a level that they'd like to, then they're going to have challenges. And sooner or later, it's going to catch up to them where they either have to do it, find a way, or choose something different.
So before I go out and tout myself as a leader, I need to find out what my own strengths are, find out what my weaknesses are, and work on those. Not really ignore my strengths, but
Work
use
on the
those.
strengths also, yes,
Okay.
because the strengths are going to be easier developed and are going to take you a long ways also.
So how do I practice these skills? Where can I go
Well,
to get those skill sets practiced?
We have a good program in Toastmasters, of course, and I'm finding for myself it's an excellent platform. It is an excellent platform to work on developing your skills. Quality communicators can be quality leaders.
How so? You've got about 2 minutes left to tell me that part.
Listening is one of the highest skills of leadership. Developing that ability to really listen to someone and clarify the communication. That's something that I've really been working on. I work on that with my wife all the time. Dear, this is what I hear you saying. Is that what you're really meaning? And she'll come back at me, and sometimes she'll get very frustrated with me. However, I'm finding that if I clarify my communication, what I'm perceiving that someone is saying to me, then I'm a step ahead. Because if I'm misinterpreting what they're saying, I'm giving them an opportunity to clarify it. And if I'm listening, then I'm getting that.
So Toastmasters then might be an avenue to practice some of these skills
Yes.
that you're talking about.
Yes.
Well, I think that is an excellent idea. Now, you belong to a couple of clubs. You belong to Early Words
Early Words.
and
Speakers with Spirit.
Speaker Spirit, and they're in the upper part of Washington, Vancouver?
The Speakers with Spirit is in Vancouver, and Early Words is up in Longview. that's
So
all
in the little bit of time we have left, I think this is such a fascinating topic. Where do people start? Do they start with Strength Finders, read all about that, take the test, and move
I
forward?
think that's a very good one.
Okay.
Strength Finders and the Myers-Briggs assessment, that's more of a personality type assessment, but it's very good because it gives you an understanding of how you look at things, whether you're judging in particular. That's one of the things I looked at. I was very heavy on judging, and that's something I had to really work on to get away from judging people.
I want to stop us there because I want you to come back and I want us to have a further discussion. Thank you, Patrick, for
Okay.
joining us tonight.
You're welcome.
Thank you for tuning into TV Toastmasters. See you next time.